Welcome to the Leadership Upgrade Podcast. I'm Dr. Kevin. In this podcast, we explore what it truly takes to become the kind of leader that people trust, respect, and want to follow. If you're a high-achieving entrepreneur or executive and you want to upgrade your leadership from the inside out, this is the place for you. So welcome. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes where we dive deep into conscious leadership, personal mastery, and building organizations that thrive. And if you want a full blueprint for upgrading your leadership, check out my new book, Lead Yourself First, the High Achiever's Guide to Upgrade Your Leadership. Grab a copy today by visiting upgradeyourleadership.com. Join the movement and upgrade your leadership. Now, let's get down to today's episode. Welcome back to the Leadership Upgrade Podcast. I'm Dr. Kevin Mays, where we're talking about all things leadership, what to do, what not to do, and how to create an environment, an organization that's inspired, where people want to show up. In this day and age, more than ever, it's about creating an environment that people want to bring their heart to the game. And one individual I know that has been laying it all on the line to create a transformative organization is our next guest. So I'm super excited to have Tony Cook with us today. Tony, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. So I'd love it if you could just jump in a little bit and tell us about your current role and the organization you're in at a high level, and then we'll start to dig down a little deeper into how you're managing the challenges of leadership.
Yeah. So current role is president/CFO. We're a small local capital equipment manufacturing company in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Been family controlled for the past 60 years. And so I'm the one outside non-family member executive on the team. I've been with the company about 10 years now. So I came on as the CFO and was recently promoted to the president role about a year ago, with kind of the direct goal of kind of transforming our culture and trying to bring some structure to the organization where it's been absent or maybe not well defined in the past. I would say we're an organization that maybe struggles a little bit with some of the sort of the newer concepts that organizations are trying to push, really focusing on trying to push our culture, really trying to formulate a positive culture that's engaging for our employees, really we find ourselves now trying to really recruit a lot of fresh talent, younger talent, and obviously engage our existing workforce and keep them happy. And without a great kind of healthy culture and without a really good vision or mission for your organization, we found that difficult to do. So these are some of the things that I've been really kind of focused on and working on, bringing that outside perspective. I haven't always been here. I've been here 10 years. So I'm working with people that have been here a long time, family members that have been here a long time, have done a great job with the organization, but we're at that point where we need to start thinking to the future and how do we scale? How do we create a succession plan for the organization? And a lot of what I'm doing in the last year has to do with that and supporting that type of.
Man, you tell a full story, and there's so many directions to go out of the gate. But the first thing I'm really interested about is being in the middle of a family. You're working in a family business, and they've been doing it a certain way for a long time. There's longevity in what they're doing. So what kind of struggles does that bring? There's not really a strength, right? My experience, family businesses, they're often more interested in long-term. They want the next generation. They want the business to be there, as opposed to a venture capital funded organization where they're just trying to cut and slash and make the thing profitable. I'm just curious how it looks from your eyes, and how do you become, number one, a member with an equal voice in a family organization? But that's the first question. How do you get your voice heard, and how's it worked?
Yeah, I think that took some time for sure. And it was coming in as the financial voice of reason, right? In the room rather. That lent some credibility to the things that I was trying to do. But then in an organization our size, we're under 50 million. We're about 60 employees. It's always a challenge to try to understand kind of where you want to go as an organization. And there's not a tremendous amount of layers within an organization like this. I think the talent that you got, you have to really focus on that talent and understand how important that they are. And you're almost working with you're working with this group of unicorns, if you will, because they know so much about this individual business. So there's a lot of credibility that they've had over the years. But that lends itself to this, we've always done it that way kind of thinking. And so coming in as an outsider, you just spend a lot of time trying to, I don't want to say challenge things, but question things in a constructive way to try to start to create some credibility for yourself and start to challenge some things. But it's definitely a crawl before you walk type of an approach. And I think one of the things that I found when I started was I really tried to, from my past experience, glean a lot from that and just go, oh, I see all these things that I want to fix. Not necessarily that they're broken, but could be done better. And that's another key, is never suggesting something is broken or it's wrong or doesn't work. It's just, we could be better. And so I tried to do a lot at once, and it was too much for the organization. So that one, I don't want to say there was upheaval, but there was a lot of pushback. So you pull back, you reassess, you feel flat. And I think just over time, you gain that credibility and that trust. And
really quick, so it was too much for the organization. So what did you learn? What kind of strategies or tactics did you use that allowed you to have the greatest amount of influence in pulling the members of the leadership team together and aligned the same direction? So everybody was on the same page and moving the same direction. How do you do that?
I think some of it is situational. You have to wait for opportunities to present themselves where you can have conversations about real world items that are occurring. So I think that was one. And I think I had to slow down. I came in charging hard. You have to slow down. You have to really bring your team and the organization along and help everybody understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And again, it's a constant reiteration of nothing that we're doing is wrong. Obviously, the organization is successful. It's gotten to where it is because of all of the work of the group and of the team. But let's start thinking of the future. How do we do things better? Let's pull back out of the details. Let's try to look at things with a fresh perspective. Open your minds a little bit. That's hard for people to do. And not everybody gets on board with that, but you get enough, I think, you start building some momentum and people start to get on board.
You get a critical mass. Absolutely. So it's fantastic. I love what you're saying. One of the things you needed to do to change the organization was to show up a little differently, to slow it down. And you're a hard charge and get things done kind of guy. And in this situation, it'll undercut you. It'll actually create resistance because people will say, what's Tony doing? He's changing this, changing that. We've always done it that way. I'm really curious how else you've discovered that you had to change to become the person who could lead the organization. What other changes did you personally make?
Yeah, I think certainly always being open to criticism. And I think I've always known that, but maybe a little bit more so here. Being self-reflective is something that, again, I've always done, but definitely more in this role, pulling back and thinking about, I think this role has really forced me to, as a leader, really think about every individual and their kind of unique circumstance, both outside of the office and in the office. And frankly, just be empathetic and put yourself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from.
It sounds like you've really painted a human context for these folks, right? You see them as humans, but I still go back to, what do you do when they're just blatantly wrong and they don't get it?
I think you have to continue to try to approach things from different angles, and you have to teach. You have to teach and lead, and you coach people. And sometimes, unfortunately, people just don't get it, I guess, for lack of a better term. And you don't ever want to cast people aside, but I think you need to move forward in spite of certain people who are resistors. And you hope that over time they come along, and many people have. But you know as well as I do that there are certain people within organizations that you frankly just have to coach out. And they're frankly better off in the long run being in a different environment where they're more aligned with the direction of the organization.
Man, isn't that so well said, to recognize, as the old saying goes, right? You need the right people on the bus.
Sure.
First of all, right? You need to make sure before the wheels are turning, the wheels on the bus are going around. You need to make sure that you've got the right people on the bus. Now, let me ask this. Tell me about the journey of understanding the values and the vision of the organization. My experience, let me just preface it by saying my experience with family organizations is maybe generations ago, they had great clarity of it. And over time, it becomes pulled apart a little bit. And the values aren't necessarily as explicit. So it makes it hard to coach people out if you don't have real clarity of what the values are and you can't see who's aligned and who's not. How have you experienced that, and what worked for you in that regard?
Yeah, and I think obviously every family controlled business, every business is different. I think here what I found was that there was a real focus on the individual contributor. There was very much emphasis on, hey, this person is a specialist in what they do, and this person is a specialist in what they do. And so we had this organization full of these unicorns, whether it be some extremely technical role or somebody that's just carved out this niche for themselves within a process or a group of processes. And so it was very difficult, I think, in some cases to try to get people to change. You don't want to lead with this fear that people are going to leave the organization with nobody behind them, but you have to bring people along. So again, it comes back to just really helping the organization realize that, okay, as you create more structure and you define people's roles and you kind of peel back the onion a little bit more and understand what people are truly doing, you start to just focus people in their lanes, I guess, if you will. And then you create expectations and start holding people more accountable, I think is kind of what, at a high level, what we did. It's creating this organizational structure and creating this, hey, everybody, we're going in this direction. And obviously we want everybody on board, but you got to be part of the team. And as valuable as you are, as much as I appreciate you, the company will survive without you or without this person. I don't want you to leave. I don't want to have to make you leave, but here's where we're going into the future. And it's a team effort.
It's fantastic. I've seen so many organizations where high performers are allowed to behave in a way that's not aligned with the values because there's this belief, like you said, fear that if they leave, we're going to fall apart. And so they're given continual leniency regarding behaving in alignment with the values of the organization. And I've seen it many times where finally that individual is coached out. And everybody says, not everybody, but too many people will say the same thing. It's about time. What took so long? Oh my God. And then you start to see people elevate who were just kind of staying in their own lane. I'm just curious if you witnessed anything like that or what that part of the journey looks like in your eyes.
Yeah, I think there were, again, like I mentioned earlier, there were various opportunities that allowed us to have some very confrontational conversations, very pointed conversations with people, very valuable people. And some of the people over time kind of got on board with the team concept and moving forward with us. And some of the other people, unfortunately, did not. And we were forced to make some hard decisions. But I think in general, as people started to recognize the value of I think the visibility to where we were going as an organization, what we were trying to do, and frankly, some of the animosity that was probably beneath the surface for some of the folks that saw the wide berth that many of these people were giving, when they saw that starting to get pulled away, it was a breath of fresh air in the organization. It's just this mutual accountability. It's really critical, especially in an organization as small as we are. You have to have it.
And you talk about accountability. What does that? Two things. One, you talk about accountability, and two, you talk about a team focus versus just individual performance. How are the two different? Individual performance versus a team focus, and how does accountability fit into each of those?
I think I just want to, make sure I understand. So you're asking, so individual contributors versus team environment and kind of how.
And what accountability means in relative to that evolution.
Yeah. Individual contributors, it was challenging to hold those people accountable in many cases because they were self-directing, if you will. And so it was kind of like hands off, maybe, where they just do, and they were getting things done. They're selling or they're designing this machine and so as long as they were doing that and there were no waves, then they were left to their own devices. And I think there was maybe a perception or a view from the organization that certain people were more valuable than other people in the organization. And so the ones that weren't maybe viewed as quite as critical were maybe scrutinized more, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very problematic. So again, as we started to recognize, let's say you're a production worker who we've had this traditional kind of historical headbutting with the us versus them. And the more you get out there, and frankly, for me, it was really a marketing effort on my part, getting out there, being visible as a leader on the floor and recognizing like, hey man, I cannot do what you do. You're building, you have 30 years of experience building equipment. I don't ever want that to be demeaned or undervalued because I can't do it without you guys. There is no us. There is no organization. So keep that in mind. It's just repeating that and keeping people to understand that, whether it's a manufacturing production worker, or if it's somebody on my ARAP team, or if it's somebody, one of our engineers, or somebody on the purchasing team. It's just recognizing that value and telling people, making sure that you're reiterating that to them. I think just builds people up and then promotes, again, that sort of team environment. And then I think the more that you start doing that, you give people that sort of confidence, then it's easier to start saying, okay, these are the expectations within your role and the things that I'd like to see. And then you start to create some accountability, and people feel good about it. It's not just I'm under somebody's thumb now. It's I understand where we're going, and I get what the value of my contributions to the organization. So, okay, I'm on board.
It's fantastic when you do that and set accountability. They have a metric to be successful against, and they can show themselves. But my curiosity is how you overcome your own ego. And that is not for you particularly, but leaders in general. I find what you're saying in deferring to others, that they have the expertise. I find sometimes it's difficult because what gets a leader into that role is their ability to get things done. Yeah. They're the fastest, the most driven, the smartest. They're the ones who can get things done. They're the great performers. Then they evolve into leadership and they still carry those same traits. And it can be a struggle sometimes to stop being the top producer and stop being the one who gets everything done and stop being the one who always has the answers and start being the curious one. And I'm just curious if that was an evolution you made, or were you naturally wired that way, or how did that come about?
I'm speaking personally. I don't know that anybody is just naturally wired that way. To me, it's just this evolutionary sort of constant growth as a leader that you get better at those things. I think that it's critical to be, I hit on it earlier, but just self-reflective, constantly thinking about interactions, that how could you have addressed things differently? How would you, if you were in that person's shoes, how would you have received the feedback or the conversation? And I even think back to, we all are smarter than our boss, right? Everybody throughout history, you've always been smarter than your boss. So I've worked for some great leaders and ones that I thought weren't so great. And in the moment, you get bogged down and feeling sorry for yourself and how terrible of a boss or a leader this person is. But after you're removed from that, I reflect back and think about, there is actually a lot that I've learned from these people, whether they were a great leader or not, both positive and negative things. But I think it's just always thinking about how you lead and being conscious of how you come across and just being gracious to your team and making sure. I think you have to be able, it's your responsibility as the coach, as the leader, to paint a very clear vision for the organization and hire according to that. You want to bring people on your team that are aligned with that vision. And that's part of, as a leader, when you're hiring, when you're bringing people on, is having that appropriate passion to talk about the vision of your organization, making sure people understand it. But then it drives everything that you do, I think. And if you're a passionate leader and you're willing to just allow yourself to be wrong and constantly learning, I think that's one of the most critical aspects of a great leader, is just understanding that you don't have all the answers, and you've got to build a team of problem solvers and people that can get things done around you, and you support them and just kind of lead the way and provide support.
Well, it's fascinating to me because as you are discussing what it takes to be a good leader, you're talking about support, you're talking about being gracious, having clarity of the vision, empathy, building these connections. I never heard you talk about a drive for profitability. And so this is the great thing. I work with organizations where they have a drive for profitability and they steamroll over all the people, and they can't figure out why their attrition is through the roof, why nobody is on board and nobody's aligned, and they can't get off of that next level of plateau because they myopically and singularly focus on the metrics. Yeah. So what's wrong with focusing on the metrics?
Yeah, the metrics are good, obviously. And I think if profit motive is your only motivation that drives the organization, it's so singularly focused. And I think there's no passion there. Unless you're some salesperson that's making $1 gazillion off of a commission for top line or margin. But of course, we're within organizations, we're in business to make money, and that's important. But it's a natural byproduct of having a great culture and the right people and the right vision and focus, I think. It doesn't just happen, right? But it's a byproduct of that. People want part of that when they believe in the organization.
I think you're illuminating the formula, I think, that I found that drives success. If, as an executive, you focus on the employees will take care of the business and the business will create the profit. Yeah. But if you're focused on the profit, then you're going to steamroll over the employees and they're all going to run a different direction. So it's a very different kind of mindset. And it's fascinating because you're the CFO starting it. So it'd be easy to just focus on the numbers, but to be able to see and understand outward looking. And for me, it's like strategy and humans, not just tactics and analytics. And finding that balance between the two is absolutely the distinction between mediocrity and greatness.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Totally.
in a organization that's family run and where a lot of the knowledge is in the heads of the brilliant individuals who've been doing it for 30 years, it can become an obstacle or a bottleneck to scaling, to growth. So what is in your observation, what's the path forward to help not lose any of the magic that makes the company special and helps define its niche, but also eliminates those bottlenecks in a way that really sets you up to scale?
Yeah, I think what I've found here, and I think this probably applies to many family controlled businesses in the West Michigan area. Excuse me, you get those, again, I talked about it earlier, I used the term unicorn, which you have. You have people that have grown up in the business. They've been part of the business since they were 12 years old. They know every corner of the facility. They know every process. They've been involved in many cases in developing the processes and creating all the workarounds that everybody understands, right? And it's getting that tribal knowledge out of people's heads when this is all they've ever known is a challenge. You have to then come in, then you have to take opportunities. Again, this is where it's really taking the long view. You have to find opportunities to upgrade talent. In my mind, at the middle management level. And you find people that are aligned with your mindset and that can help you create the infrastructure to start extracting that knowledge. You got to pull it out of their heads. And because then you're stuck in what we started talking about initially, where if this person leaves, we're in trouble. The organization's going to fall. It's not the case. But you do have to be able to get that information out of people's heads. And what I've found, frankly, in some instances, we've had people leave that were these unicorns, and it forced the issue after they were gone. It's, okay, they have a special way of building this machine or doing that, but we're smart people. We can figure this out. And so it forced us to do so. And I think those are healthy things. And it's actually a healthy thing to point back to the people that have been inserted in an organization for a long time to say, see, you told me this person was irreplaceable, but look, here we are. The organization survived and we're better because of it. So
did you find people step up when those kind of things happened?
Yeah, absolutely. You start leveraging back. Okay, this person was involved in this process. This person's done this in the past. So you just get everybody together, and frankly, it forces you to go, okay, this is how we've done it, at least to our knowledge. Let's pull back and go, okay, how should we be doing it? And it forces fresh perspectives. I think it's really beneficial for an organization.
This is my question, because I've seen in organizations so many times when a top performer leaves, other people then step up, and there's this deeper potential hidden in the organization that doesn't get discovered until somebody leaves. Now, but waiting for somebody to leave to find the potential isn't necessarily the best case scenario. How do you mine that potential and help people bring? It's really, I think it goes back to the culture and the soul and the heart of the organization. How do you illuminate that so people bring their potential and stop falling into the pattern of staying in their lane and this is not my job? Like, how do you break through that to create this organization where people really bring their heart and soul to the game?
Yeah, again, it comes back to the appropriate leadership and having the right vision and mission for the organization. And then that core leadership group is absolutely critical, not only in terms of just questioning and being involved and bringing people along for different projects so that you can extract that information, but also just creating that team concept, helping people understand their value, but that they're so valuable that but there's a balance. You get in this, some of these folks get this opinion that, if I teach somebody how to do this, then they're indispensable. So they're going to get rid of me. So it's creating a trusting relationship, right? So that they don't think that they're going to be cast aside if the key to the castle is all of a sudden passed to somebody else. And once you do that, then it's just bringing people along. And there's just, I don't know, I think there's just this sort of illumination of people when they start to understand that it's not just them. They're on a team. They're not on an island. They're part of a group. They're part of something bigger than themselves. It's for the right people. I think it's fantastic. And I think it's super powerful.
It's got to be pretty cool. I bet you see the defensiveness shift, right? Because what I find when an organization isn't team focused, you see a lot of territoriality, defensiveness, people trying to explain why somebody else is the problem, not them. And you see this erosion of accountability that happens. But on a team, people don't want to let each other down.
Yeah.
And there's something that happens in a team that really is a special sauce in organizations, I find. Now, the other thing I find is that I'll say with 100% certainty, if I go into an organization and I find at the front line there's chaos, there's lack of communication, people don't know what direction they're going, it's a scramble, 100% of the time I can trace it back up to like the leadership table. And when I find an organization that's dialed in and highly effective, I can trace it back up to the leadership table. And what I find is the leader becomes the capstone of the culture. That being said, right? So it requires you to really be intentional. And I think about this, right? I love it. We started at the beginning, coming full circle in the conversation we had just before we started, talking about how you unplug and how you sharpen your own saw as a leader, because it's great to take care of the organization. But if you're always taking care of the organization and not really making sure that your bucket is filled, that you are replenished, that you're your best, the organization's going to suffer.
Sure.
Last question before we wind this up. What's your favorite way to unplug? And tell us a story about how you unplug and what that looks like, or how you've unplugged recently and what that does for you.
I tell you, one of my favorite ways to unplug is to go to our cottage in the northern Michigan. But we have a family camping trip that I've done with my wife and my 3 kids for the past 10 years. I'm in the UP. And you have no choice but to unplug. You don't have cell service. You're in the middle of nowhere. There's no running water, no electricity. And that sounds like absolute torture for some people. For me, it's heaven on earth. And so being able to just kind of reconnect with family without staring at a device, without that distraction, without the distractions of work. I think I still think about work, but it's not in the same way. You're reflecting. You're not in the day-to-day managing through crises and thinking about all the things that you've got to do and reacting to your email. But for me, it's getting out in nature, I think, and being around my family is one of my most just favorite ways to kind of pull myself out, recharge my batteries, get out in the woods, get up to Lake Superior. It's fabulous. So that for me is it.
Yeah. Well, what a great thing just to be able to reconnect with yourself and to the things at a core level that are important. I find too many leaders, when they feel like they're behind the 8 ball or under the gun, they just continue to burn the candle. And I've seen people sacrifice their family and sacrifice themselves and sacrifice their health. And I know, knowing you, that's one thing that you've accomplished, that sense of discipline or ritual in your own life that allows you to have to fine tune your ability to think and your ability to lead to create a balance.
Yep.
Any final words that you would offer, any advice to other leaders out there? Well, anything else you would offer that would help individuals who are on the pathway, maybe in a similar situation, who are struggling with the kinds of things you're struggling with? What do you tell them?
I think be vulnerable. I think it's okay. You have to be vulnerable to feedback, and that self-reflection I keep talking about. It's so important. Just reflect. I reflect every day, at the end of the day, during the day, on interactions and how I handled things, how I could have phrased things differently, both verbally and in emails. So I think that for me is huge. And I think you just have to recognize you're always learning and you're always changing and developing as a leader. You're always getting better. You just have to keep an open mind to that. And I think, frankly, for those of us with families, you can apply those very same concepts to your interactions with your wife and with your children or your significant other. There's a lot of learning to be done there. And there are a tremendous amount of parallels in my mind between being a great leader and how you lead family.
That's just a brilliant way to pull it all together, right? What got you here will not get you there. And as your family evolves, you must evolve. And to be a leader of your family is no different. It's all you. The way you show up at work, the way you show up with your family, the way you show up for yourself.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. It's a fantastic conversation, Tony. I appreciate it. For those who want to learn more about your organization, your product line, and what you do, where can they look to learn a little bit?
EdgeSuites.com.
EdgeSuites.com. Thank you so much.
Contrary to popular belief, we do not make chocolates. We make
Do not make
fabrication and polyurethane processing equipment. Yes, big industrial equipment.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you for your insight. I know it's going to be valuable for our listeners. I really appreciate it. And for our listeners, remember, lead yourself first. If you haven't downloaded a copy or purchased it, get it now and get on the pathway to lead yourself with purpose, with intention, unplug and be intentional. Thanks for joining us on today's Leadership Upgrade podcast. Now, if you want to continue to challenge your ideas about leadership while increasing your influence, make sure to subscribe to the channel and share this episode with someone you know who wants to become a more inspired executive. If you're ready to take the next major step in upgrading your leadership, don't forget to grab a copy of Lead Yourself First, the High Achiever's Guide to Upgrade Your Leadership, available now. Just go to Upgrade Your Leadership now to secure your copy of the book, and we have additional resources available for those who are truly committed to becoming better. So download the workbook, get the book, and put yourself on a path to become the best version of yourself as a leader. Remember, before you can truly lead others, you must first learn to lead yourself. See you on the next episode. For now, this is Dr. Kevin wishing you well.